What if Ahsoka came to Mandalore, Part 4? When she got back to Mandalore, Ahsoka was relieved that Rex mostly had the situation under control. He had already combed through all the people who had recently arrived on the Mandalore system, managing to find several more Imperial spies. This allowed her to focus on the most important thing when Ahsoka got back. It was something only she could do as Mandalore, cracking down against a clan who she believed to be the one cooperating with the Empire, Clan Saxon. From the first day she had become Mandalore, they had been against her and openly questioned her. Ahsoka found it ironic they had accepted Maul, at least on the surface, but not her. It wasn't hard to find decisive evidence that proved they were cooperating with the Empire and betraying Mandalore. They didn't try to hide their transmissions, their contact with spies, or when they blatantly tried to get to Concordia or other military posts managed exclusively by the clones. Gar Saxon, the leader of Clan Saxon, also openly questioned and fired Ahsoka, as if he was already thought himself as a ruler instead of her. Several clans had at first protested against her blatant attack against Clan Saxon, but they went quiet when they learned that Clan Saxon was betraying them. It helped that Ahsoka only punished those directly involved, leaving the rest of Clan Saxon unaffected, though if they had the strength to be called a clan anymore was questionable. Following this, Ahsoka reached out to everyone that she knew, seeking to verify if the Empire was indeed preparing to attack Mandalore. Though most didn't respond, the few that did gave information that suggested that the Empire was building up for military action of some kind. The most decisive evidence, though, came from the person she least expected again, Saw Gerrera. Apparently, before he destroyed the facility in Aradu, he had copied the Imperial archives that are available there. In fact, apparently, the reason the admirals and political figures were meeting there in the first place was because they were planning the reintegration of Mandalore. Needing nothing more to convince her, Ahsoka prepared every plan and move in the system for war, and readied both the clones and Mandalorians for the upcoming fight. For the Mandalorians, she had to send a message to all the groups that are spread across the galaxy. Ahsoka encouraged them to continue their mercenary and bounty hunting work, or whatever else they did, especially the new recruits. It gave them both experience and a form of income. They also provided her with detailed information of events happening across the galaxy. Now, most of them heeded her call and thousands of Mandalorians came flooding back to prepare to defend their home. However, even as days passed, no attack came. Enough time soon passed that some Mandalorians began to openly question why Ahsoka summoned them. At times like this, Ahsoka was even more thankful with the clones, who didn't question her, instead faithfully trusting her and maintaining combat readiness. Even with this, she did start to doubt the information she had received and her own instincts again, but managed to reason herself out of self-doubt thanks to the support of others. There was also too many indicators pointing towards an attack. Whether it be because of the death of Tarkin and the other Imperials, the capture of the spies, or the loss of inside support from Clan Saxon, Ahsoka reasoned that the Empire most likely postponed their plans. As the second year anniversary of the founding of the Empire came, Ahsoka stayed in isolation as she had the previous year. Unfortunately, this didn't last as Bo-Katan and several other clones of Mandalorians came bursting in. The Empire was finally attacking. Ahsoka rushed to command and understand the situation. However, the attack was over before she could even be briefed on the situation, and thankfully, it wasn't too damaging. The clones had kept on high alert since Ahsoka raided them, and though it had taken a toll on them, they persisted. This allowed them to be ready when the Imperial ships jumped in and adequately responded. It helped that Ahsoka had spared no expense when equipping them. As of now, over half the fighters fielded were the Fang fighters, a fighter that Ahsoka immediately recognized for its capability and usefulness. The worrying thing was that from the reports, the Empire also had a new fighter, though it took seeing a recording for her to believe the description. The clones reported that they were fast, even from looking at them, so I could tell they weren't good fighters. They had solar panels on either side causing blind spots, and from the initial skirmish, they didn't appear to have deflector shields or life support. These fighters seemed to be literally flying coffins. Alongside the Mandalorians and clones, Ahsoka planned for the next battle that was sure to come. The first attack was most likely a probing one before the actual attack anyway. With these new fighters and the Imperial usage of close-range weapons on the capital ships, they could mostly think of the opposing fleet as if it was a droid one for their plans, making things much simpler. They only had to wait until the next day before the Empire returned. While waiting, Ahsoka opted to remain on Vendor in orbit, anticipating the attack. When ships were detected exiting from hyperspace, Ahsoka was able to immediately take command. As the Imperial ships appeared, Fighters are already mustering in front of the Mandalorian fleet, but the Imperials didn't attack. The Imperial fleet instead held position at the edge of the Mandalore system, near where they had jumped in. Ahsoka still sent fighters to harass and probe them, but it also gave her a chance to get a look at what they are facing. The Imperial fleet composition was unusual, but not unfamiliar, especially compared to the early Republic fleets. Though there were several Star Destroyers, both vendors and their new ISDs, most of the rest of the fleet were lighter ships, some of which didn't appear to be purpose-built warships. The Mandalorian fleet that Ahsoka ready, on the other hand, were all purpose-built warships, the converted civilian ships being held in reserve. This standoff went on for several days, the Imperials consistently bringing in more ships, while Ahsoka had the clones continually harass them. The Empire was thankfully the only massive in Mandalore itself, so it appeared the other worlds and moons would be spared, at least initially. This way, they were also able to keep importing much needed supplies, though Ahsoka had stocked up in anticipation of the blockade. They were able to destroy a few ships on their attack runs with thankfully few losses, though as the debris increased, it became hard to attack. Also, this fleet didn't just have the new fighters as the probe one had, but also several wings of V-Wing starfighters, which along with their ragtag navy, just showed how under-equipped they still were. So I could just wonder if this attack was a decision of any military leader, or if it was ordered from someone like Emperor Palpatine. Though she didn't know what initiated it, almost a week after the first ships had arrived, the Imperials were on the offensive. By now they had nearly 100 ships, even with them losing several from their attack runs, so the battle immediately fell into a chaotic mess. Ahsoka tried to save as many of her assets as possible, shielding weak ships and ordering the retreat of damaged ones, but losses were still heavy. However, she couldn't figure out what the aim of the Imperials was. They were still outnumbered, so it wasn't like they could win, and they were throwing away ships as they threw themselves against her fleet. Then she watched an Imperial ship somehow get around them and go to Mandalore, where it entered the planet's atmosphere. Thankfully, the Mandalorians, who Ahsoka had ordered to stay and protect their planet, were indeed protecting it and managed to shoot the cruiser down. Ahsoka was horrified as she reached the conclusion that perhaps the Empire was targeting Mandalore itself, likely trying to get them to turn on Ahsoka and the clones, or risk being destroyed. She knew that the Mandalorians wouldn't turn on her, or at least most of them, but the Empire was still targeting them. Now understanding the situation, Ahsoka brought up reinforcements to maintain the battle line and engage the Imperial ships and fighters with the rest of the fleet. She also told Bo-Katan, who was by her side on the vendor, what she feared and forwarded to warn the Mandalorian defenders about it. By the end of the battle, which was only achieved when they had managed to destroy every Imperial ship and fighter, the Mandalorian fleet was badly mauled, but still mostly operational. Several wrecks had crashed on the Mandalore surface, but thankfully, none of them hit any population centers. Ahsoka was relieved to hear that no civilians were killed from the ships and fighters that had managed to get to the cities before being destroyed, though several buildings were damaged. Cleanup from these and clearing the space lanes to the planet immediately got underway, though they were still alert for any more attacks. When Ahsoka and her entourage got back to Sundari, for the first time, the people cheered for her and the clones. Bo-Katan suggested they hold a festival that night, and Ahsoka permitted it, along with the visuals of those that gave their lives, allowing the clones to participate if they wanted to. Even though it was rushed, the festival was grand and unbeknownst to her, Bo-Katan and the heads of the other Mandalorian clans already had an event prepared. It started when Ahsoka arrived with Bo-Katan, who had brought her to a makeshift stage in the center of one of the plazas. There, Bo-Katan spoke to the gathering crowd, telling them of how hard Ahsoka had worked as Mandalore for her people, whoever they might have been. Now, with her victory over the Empire that had wished to subjugate them, Bo-Katan and the other clan leaders believed that it was finally time to make Ahsoka a true Mandalorian. She had done everything she could. Now, all that Ahsoka needed to be one of them was a set of Mandalorian Beskar armor. At her words, Ursa Wren, the leader of Clan Wren, brought out a complete set of Beskar armor. Ahsoka went along with Bo-Katan, not knowing what else to do. She was happy that the people seemed to have finally truly accepted her and the clones, happy that she had won her first battle against the Empire, but she also felt guilty that these people had not been a priority all this time. This realization came along with how she was now able to take darksaber with her across the galaxy to show that she was the Mandalore. Wearing armor was also a concern. Ahsoka had previously opted to wear non-restricted clothes because being fast and agile was her strength, and it was also what felt comfortable. Wearing armor would hinder that, but she wouldn't refuse his gift, even if she could only wear it for ceremonial purposes. As she let Bo-Katan place the armor on her, teaching her how to do it on the way, Bo-Katan also quietly talked with her. She told Ahsoka they'd been making this armor since she had brought back Dooku's war chest, and apologized it took so long. It had just been finished, and they thought this was a perfect opportunity to give it to her. She also said the armor was a special version, one that was specifically made to allow maximum movement. Ahsoka could tell this was true as, though it was heavy, she could mostly freely move. This armor truly appeared to be made for her. It fit her degree of physicality perfectly, and she didn't feel any discomfort even as a Lekku brushed against her Beskar. Once the main armor was in place, the head of Clan Elder handed Ahsoka one of the metal meshes that she held. It felt like cloth in Ahsoka's hands. Bo-Katan had another one, and when she unraveled it, Ahsoka realized it was the same shape as a foremost Lekku. Bo-Katan told her that she had heard that her Montrals and Lekku were sensitive, and could even result in death if damaged, so they had made these chainmail covers for them. They are made of cortosis, a rare, energy-resistant material that could protect them from all energy weapons, from blasters to lightsabers. Before she put them on, she wanted to make sure that Ahsoka was fine with her touching a Lekku, though it felt natural for someone else to touch them. Ahsoka had no idea how to put the chainmail covers on, so she allowed Bo-Katan to do it. The 4 separate pieces soon turned into one, as all 3 of her Lekku were covered, before the metal were slid over her Montrals. It was all secured to the 4th piece by chains, which was a plate at the forefront of her head. Having her Lekku and Montrals covered felt weird, and her perception was a bit distorted, but surprisingly that was all. It definitely would take time to get used to, but at least it wasn't uncomfortable. The final piece was a face mask, one that had a few systems inside like location and atmosphere checks. Ahsoka thanked first the clan leaders, then the people for their support. She kept the armor on for the duration of the festival, though not the face mask. Thankfully, they had thought of that and made a place to clip it to on her breastplate. Bo-Katan had come to her back when things started to settle down early in the morning the next day. She helped Ahsoka take off her new armor, going over everything again. She also showed what weapons were built into the armor and how to use them, like a flamethrower and whistling birds. She also promised Ahsoka a jetpack, but they were still working on how to mount it with her back Lekku. Ahsoka thanked her profusely for everything she had done, and for being there for when she had first took on the mantle of Mandalore. Bo-Katan was just happy that her people were safe and free. With the Empire's attack, Ahsoka and the clones are now free to make several supply runs to worlds across the galaxy, delivering weapons to any world that was resisting the Empire. Ryloth, Minbomb, Kashyyyk, Kaylee, and Dorian all soon had more than enough weapons to resist the Empire, or at least give them trouble. Ahsoka didn't care about what the aftermath of this could be. She knew that she'd be creating more Saw Gerreras and partisans, but her only goal was for this Empire to burn, without further endangering Mandalore or shedding too much of its blood. Inflaming these conflicts seemed like a great way to do that. Mandalorian task force fleets also went to aid any world that were facing Imperial fleets, though they didn't engage in any ground combats. One of the worlds that Ahsoka personally helped with was Mon Calamari. Part of this was get King Lee Char's support and resources, which he managed to do. The only ground combat that Ahsoka permitted were raids against Imperial facilities, mainly credit vaults. Not only was Dooku War's chest running low, but now they were waging an active war. The economy of the Mandalorian citizen couldn't pay for it, so they needed credits, and who better get it from than the Empire? These raids were carried out by a mix of Mandalorians and clones, who by now are practically the same people. During the raids, the clones showed just how much the Mandalorian training paid off, as well as equipping them like Mandalorian. The clones had mostly been fully absorbed in Mandalorian society by now, the only thing differentiating them being their face and their armor, though practically none of it was white anymore. The reaction of the people of the galaxy was mixed to these raids, though most of it was negative. They wanted peace, but now there was 2 factions fighting, one of which being a people that are known for their brutal crusades. Ahsoka understood that Bo-Katan wanted people to face the galaxy as victims, but for anyone that knew Republic history, if they heard that the Mandalorians were at war, then they would fear them, not sympathize with them. Still, since the conflicts were small, mostly isolated from civilian centers, there wasn't a lot of panic amongst the general population, and they tolerated the skirmishes. Ahsoka tried to keep it like this, and to keep it a secret that she was arming everyone that was currently fighting the Empire. as many aspects of the Empire were affected and began to crumble because of Ahsoka and her people. From their military control and unity, it wasn't uncommon to see worlds or even entire systems declare neutrality, not wanting their world to have an Imperial presence and be a target for Mandalorian attack. The Empire was forced to follow this, not having the manpower to both fight and defend against the Mandalorians and keep these planets in check. This further destroyed the cohesion of the galaxy, with individual worlds now taking the opportunity to act on their own terms, becoming independent. This was rare though, as if any world got too out of line, then it appeared Darth Vader would go and regain control. Because of this, Darth Vader soon became feared across the galaxy for the brutality used to keep these planets in check. Barriss was most idle during all this. Ahsoka often found her in the medical center, treating the wound that came in from the skirmishes. She was content with leaving her there. She knew not only that force healing was one of Barriss' strong suits, but that treating the wound was something that brought her peace. While the Empire slip turned into a slide, Ahsoka was looking and hunting all things Sith. She needed to find out who Darth Sidious was in order to have her complete revenge. And though she had some guesses, she wanted to be sure. There's also Darth Vader, someone who she wanted nothing more than to kill. She was doing her best to find him, but so far he had been elusive. Desperately wanting to catch him, she decided to change her tactics. Instead of her hunting him, she would act as bait to lure out Darth Vader. Ahsoka went on even more missions and constantly made herself visible whenever she left Mandalore, always wearing her new armor. Because of this, without even meaning to, she soon became an even bigger figure amongst Mandalorians, as well as a figurehead to those that were resisting the Empire. She immediately began to use this to her advantage, knowing that it made her an even bigger target. Deciding it was finally time, she leaked the next raid target and planned to meet on the planet beforehand to prepare an ambush. Ahsoka led the raid party on the leaked date, but though there was more Imperial soldiers and better prepared defenses, there was no Darth Vader. She was disappointed as they finished their mission, destroying a new Imperial experimental weapon, and she went back to her fighter, intending to try again. However, the comms failed to live the chatter in frantic voices. Sounds of battle followed, but not over the comms. Ahsoka bolted towards the noise and ran into a firefight. She charged in, lightsabers igniting and cutting through armor and flesh. The fight quickly turned in their favor with her there, but a lone figure still stood a distance from the battle, several clones of Mandalorian bodies lying broken around him. It was Darth Vader, one of the ever-shrinking group of people that were loyal to Darth Sidious. Ahsoka had been unable to forget anything about him, and had been constantly preparing to face him again, thankful that was finally happening. Though Ahsoka had not fought a lightsaber duel with her new armor, she had been trained with it on and always worn it if she had left Mandalore, even sometimes while she was on the planets. It had gradually become comfortable for her to wear it, much like how the clones preferred to always wear their armor. Ahsoka charged towards Darth Vader, pushing him away from the previous battle site and away from the fallen that she hoped were still alive. Using brute force and relying on her armor, she pushed him out of the compound and into the open field beyond before pausing. The clones with Rex leading surrounded them there, though definitely enough room for them to fight. Darth Vader made no move to continue the fight, so Ahsoka crouched, readying the darksaber and the shoulder that Anakin had given her, and charged at him. He was like a wall that she moved around, though she was able to also stand her ground with the armor when required. Neither of them seemed to have an advantage against the other, but if there was one thing Ahsoka learned, it was to never fight fair, and that she was never alone. The first stun round hit Darth Vader before he could react, but soon his attention was torn between fighting her and defending against stun rounds from the clones. It was just like the training that Anakin had used to test her. Still, Darth Vader managed to hold his own, preventing another full stun round from hitting him, all while he held her back. He was using the fact that the clones had to stop firing when Ahsoka got in front of them, and started moving around her, using her as a shield against the clones while throwing them off their feet with force. Ahsoka thought of this though, and speaking of her plan a little bit, she charged Darth Vader. He raised the lightsaber, blocking hers, but that's exactly what she wanted. Praying that she wasn't making a critical mistake, she whipped her head, her leku falling in an arc. It hit both Darth Vader's lightsaber and the darksaber, or more importantly, the Cortosis chainmail did. Having braced for the possibility of failure and pain, she was instead relieved to see both lightsabers short circuit and deignite. Pushing forward with her Shoto, She drove him backwards towards the clones, before using the flamethrower built into her right arm to create distance. The clones were ready, even though the plan was rushed. They continued to shoot stun rounds as several rolled droid parts to Darth Vader's feet. Ahsoka didn't know if he had no time to react, or if he just gave up, but soon Darth Vader was engulfed in electricity. If there was one thing Ahsoka realized about Darth Vader from the last fight, it was that he was more machine than man. Stun rounds and droid powers would work on a normal person, but against a machine, they were lethal. The heavy, black form fell to the ground in a heap. The sound loud in the sounds that followed. So cautiously approaching along several clones including Rex. She wasn't sure what she was going to do if he managed to survive. Should she kill him or capture and try to bring Anakin back? Gently kneeling by the black heap, she took his lightsaber before going for his helmet. A gasp escaped her as she saw the condition of his face that was covered in burn scars. Some of the clones around her also started murmuring, still able to recognize Anakin even with the scars and suit. Ahsoka still wanted him to die for betraying her, but now she knew that she couldn't with the clones. She didn't know if she was relieved for it. However, unlike her, Rex had continued to search Darth Vader and check his condition. When he looked up, Ahsoka realized and she quickly verified he wasn't breathing. Rex confirmed, telling her that his heart had stopped. He was dead. Later, Darth Vader was seen being burned in a bonfire by a mob on the hall nets, but the suit was empty. Ahsoka and Rex, with the help of Bail Organa, had taken the body inside and buried Anakin on Naboo near Padme, finally putting them both to rest. It was there that Bail Organa told her that Padme had given birth to twins before she had died, and that one of them is now his daughter. Shocked and unable to fully process the revelation, Ahsoka hesitantly inquired about the other twin. Bail Organa only told her that it was a boy and that he was safe. He let her meet his new daughter after the funeral, which she was grateful for, but she decided not to get involved in her life yet. She couldn't bring herself to think of the future when she was so weighed down by the past. The Empire had yet to fully burn, and Darth Sidious was still alive. Her revenge was not complete. She had already decided to separate the weak and innocent from this, especially if they happened to be Anakin and Padme's legacy.